Hello everyone, this is Pigsy, and today I'm going to bring you a special little mini update on the Symphony of the Night project. As mentioned in my previous video, I was planning to take a few months off the Castlevania updates, but recently I've done some nice little improvements, so I just want to share it with everyone in this quick little video. One of the most common complaints about the demo was the lack of visual feedback when you hit an enemy, for example this Axeman here. Shortly after the last video went live, Pyron contacted me to make a suggestion, and a few people made the same suggestion too, and that is to use the same technique as they're using Contra Hardcore. And what happens when an enemy gets hit is you can take the palette and you can swap it round with the other palette. So for example, the X-Man here is using the fourth palette. And what I do is when he gets hit, within the space of maybe half a second, I quickly cycle the palette that that particular sprite is using to the first palette, then second, then third, then back to the fourth again. So it creates this kind of little colour effect. While it would be preferable to have an extra spare reddish palette to swap in whenever an enemy got hit, I think this technique does the job well of letting the player know that an enemy's definitely got hit. This also means I don't have to add any extra spark sprites, which is a bit of an issue because I'm already using a lot of the sprites available for the system already, especially in some scenes, so I think just this technique will be enough and I'll implement it for all enemies. One thing that I've wanted to do for quite a while now but didn't have time due to the pressure of having to get the demo out is a resolution select screen. So now in this new build you'll have a resolution select screen at the very start of the game. You select whether you want 320 mode or 256, and then once you select that it will take you into the game. I think that most people playing probably won't know what the difference between 320 and 256 is, so I'll probably rename the 320 version the widescreen version, even though the proportions aren't exactly widescreen. Changing the resolution with an SGDK is actually pretty straightforward, and I'll include a link to a video that I did about that here so you can check that out if you're interested in hearing more. The really tricky part about doing this is to make sure that the different resolutions are adapted to the game engine, including the enemy AI, the graphical assets and so on. Thankfully, after a bit of thinking and testing, I've managed to find a solution which allows me to offer the two different resolution modes without creating a lot of extra work for myself. If anyone knows of any Mega Drive game which allows you to choose the resolution in this way, then please let me know, but to the best of my knowledge this could be a first for the console. Also, from the point of view of this demake, it's nice to add something extra that the PlayStation version didn't have. Now, as I've been talking about the resolution, you've no doubt noticed that we've been in the long library. You've also probably noticed that the graphics here appear a bit strange, and that's because these are obviously placeholders that I've just done. I think each screen took me about 60 seconds just to reduce the colours and convert it to the Mega Drive, and just because I wanted to test the level design rather than have a nice image to look at. The very first room is particularly very ugly. The other ones aren't quite so bad, and you can see this screen here where I'm just testing to do using some sprites to create a third background layer for these desks here, and in the end these desks will be behind the foreground layer, just as I did in the entrance level for the corridors where I had the extra trees and bushes in between the background and the foreground. In my game this library level will come after the outer wall level, so I think that will make it maybe the 5th level in the game, so it has to have a certain amount of difficulty, and it's quite a challenge because the library section itself is pretty plain in terms of it just has pretty much all these little corridors and rooms, so I'm going to have to get very creative in creating some level gimmicks to make it interesting as an action platformer. I already have plenty of ideas in terms of level gimmicks and so on, and you can see here that the layout of some of the rooms has changed quite a bit, but of course if anyone else has any suggestions then feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll take a look. The music you're hearing here is by Engelbart, but he's already going to make some changes to it, just as he did with the Outer Wall and the Alchemy Lab music too. This room here will be a little sub-boss room, and you can see that I've made some changes to the level layout just to give a bit of extra height and so on, because if you're going to do battle with an enemy in this room then you need some space to fight them and to dodge and so on. So actually I'm not entirely sure which enemy I'm going to put in here. Again, if you have any suggestions then please let me know, but I have a few ideas I want to try out and I'll see how they work with the room itself. And obviously the steel corridor here is one of the worst in terms of the colours, but one of the things I like about the original long library is although it's inside a lot, it still has some decent parallax scrolling. So it has a bit of distance to it, which can be quite hard to achieve when you're just dealing with inside rooms. In terms of the VRAM usage, thankfully these long library sections are not so bad. For some of the, for example the bookshelves, we maybe simplify things a bit and not have quite so many unique tiles, but that would be very hard to tell when you're actually playing the game. I don't think most people will notice that, but I think it's the colours which are really difficult for this one. The original uses lots of these very subtle and muted yellows But the Mega Drive palette, that doesn't tend to be very strong in this area, so it'll be very interesting to see what Pyron comes up with. In terms of level design, I know some people didn't like it. Some of the jumps were quite difficult in the demo, especially those areas where you hit your head. So for example, this little area here, I'll probably change it maybe to make the bug platform a bit higher so that Alucard doesn't hit his head, because I don't want any pixel perfect jumps in the game. I think the jumping should be more difficult than in the original because it's a platformer. It should be more challenging. But I'll try and avoid any situations like this where you have to be almost pixel perfect and you can maybe hit your head on the top here, because that can be a bit frustrating. Just a quick word in terms of overall game design. So as everyone knows, this is going to be more like Rondo of Blood, action platformer with split paths. And for this particular path, the long library path, it will take you through the first level would be the entrance, the second will be the alchemy lab, the third will be marble gallery, then outer wall. So this will be the 5th level. Then once you've gone through this level, it'll take you to the 6th level, which is the castle keep, and then finally onto the boss battle. For the library final boss, I'm going to keep it the same as in the original. I think the boss was quite too easy in the original, as most of the bosses are, so I'm definitely going to make some changes to make it more challenging, but the basic boss design will be the same. As well as the long library, I've also done some experimentation with other levels too, in the same way, again just doing very quick conversion jobs, the 6 conversion jobs for the colours, so none of these rooms are looking very good. And of course this is the catacombs level with music by Aliana. The reason I'm jumping on the stairs here is because in the demo there was a bug with the stair jumping, so sometimes when you jumped on the stairs there was like a very harsh redirection, a snapping of the camera. This only happened on some parts of the stairs. When you jumped on certain sections it seemed okay, then you'll move a few pixels to the right or left and then jump again, and then you'll have this kind of a snapping motion when you landed. So it took me a little while to find out where the source of the bug is, but then I worked it out and it should be fine in the newer versions of the game. In terms of VRAM usage, the Catacombs is definitely a more challenging level than the long library, but so we'll probably have to make some simplifications here and there. For example, we have these like scaffolding parts at the very bottom of the level you just saw a second ago, where they got the wood and the different colored rock, and that's going to be, that only adds a little bit to the presentation, but it adds more colors that we need to deal with, plus more unique VRAM tiles too. So I've told Pyron that if he wants, he can maybe have make those as pure black instead of having these extra scaffolding, these extra detail, so it makes the color conversion a bit easier. But I'll leave that up to him. I think he might have some tricks up his sleeve that he can make it so that we can include all the details. Obviously we try and include as much as we can, but there are some certain sections where you need to simplify things a bit, so we'll see how this one turns out later. This spiked area here is interesting because it looks very simple, but you can see that there's some corruption in the tiles, and that's because the background tiles are using so many unique tiles that is impinging on the sprite tiles as well. So that's an area you definitely have to simplify a bit, but maybe I did a conversion wrong on that one. Maybe the tiles are shift to 1 pixel to the left or something. I did something wrong when putting that particular section into the game. As I said, I didn't spend too much time dealing with the graphics. I just did a very quick job, so I wanted to try some different levels. Although in this catacombs part, you'll notice that I've pretty much stuck to the old level design so far, and that's because I've thought through, I've got on paper how I want the game to look, but I just wanted to check out the VRAM requirements and just quickly put them into game just to see how they are. As with all other areas of the castle, this will go through a lot of changes to make it more suitable for an action platforming game. This boss here is one I'm really looking forward to program. I already did, I think my very first video, I did the very first Castlevania video I ever did. I did a very basic little demo of it, so I'll probably, for the big boss sprite here, the Legion, I think it's called the Grenfaloon, I use one of the background layers because it just needs, you can't have a sprite that big on the Mega Drive, it takes up more than the screen. But this is going to be a very interesting one to program, a very challenging one to program, but a very interesting one nonetheless. For the next two levels, I've just done a single screen for each one, just to have a very quick test. Especially this, the Coliseum level, it's pretty much the original, it's just full of these little corridors where they just throw in a ton of different enemies, so this definitely needs a lot of changing in terms of level design. But I've already this one actually, I've got a very lot of very fun ideas, so it's going to be quite different from the original, but I think everyone's going to enjoy it. And again, if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. In terms of level design, I think the Roll Chapel has already got some little fun elements, even in the original, which will be suitable for an action platformer. For example, this long stairway, I think I can keep this pretty much as it is, add a few different enemy types, but I think this is already quite fun as it is to crawl your way up here. I think it's a very iconic section of the original, so for this particular room I'll keep it pretty much the same. For other sections of the Royal Chapel I'm definitely going to make some bigger changes. This second version is the same, but you can see that I've removed the trees at the very top, that background, because you don't get to see them too much anyway, and since it adds more colour demands and more VRAM demands, as told Pyron, that maybe we can just do away with the little forest behind, because it's so near the top that you don't really see it most of the time you're fighting way up this staircase anyway. We can just maybe leave that black or as a single solid colour, but again, it's up to him. Hopefully maybe he can work some magic and get it fitting okay, but for some areas, especially the Royal Chapel, there's some really areas which are very heavy on both the colours and on the VRAM too, so as is everyone else, I'll be very looking forward to seeing what Pyron comes up with. You might remember that I mentioned that stair jumping bug before, and it's when I came to this section here that I really decided to fix it once and for all, because obviously for this section when you're climbing up the stairs, that'd be very annoying if you kept getting this jerkiness of the camera. If you're wondering which part of the castle this next section is from, don't worry, it's not an exclusive part of the SotN content, this is actually from GG Shinobi. Since those graphical assets from the new parts of the castle are going to take a while for Pyron to work his magic on, I think it's a good idea, a good opportunity for me to focus a bit more on GG Shinobi. And I think I mentioned in the previous video too that I want to do this anyway, so I want to try some new techniques in terms of loading the level and the enemy data and so on, which eventually I'll be able to roll back into the Castlevania game as well. Although the GG Shinobi game is a much smaller project when compared to Symphony of the Night, as I mentioned before, one of the biggest challenges is doing new graphical assets, because it's not just a case of adding new colours, they pretty much need to be completely withdrawn, because as you can see here they look very 8-bit. That's especially evident when we have this high-res Alucard in the scene too. You can see how low-res the Game Gear graphics look. I've actually been doing a lot of work these past couple of weeks on drawing new assets for GG Shinobi, and that will be the topic of the next video. Okay, so that's about it for this video. As always, thanks very much for watching, and if you're interested in this type of content, don't forget to subscribe.
I'm interested in this.
And for those of you who wish to support the channel, I have a Patreon and any support is much appreciated.
You won't go unrewarded.
Until next time,
farewell.